Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a very special member of the jungle today, apex predator Ryan Larsen. So,
Apex predator. Okay, I like it. I'll take it.
On a serious note, we've got one amazing guy, a wonderful friend, a leader, and a scary man on karaoke, Ryan Larsen.
The people love me, Das.
I'm aware.
People love me.
Actually, right before you came in, I was just doing a pod with Jacob, and he was showing me your karaoke that I missed.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know there was a video of it, but
oh, I didn't either. Except he showed it to me today.
Yeah, I've never seen, I've never seen someone get down with the crowd quite the same way.
They willed me back onto stage, Das. Missed my time slot, and the people willed me back on. And
so
we made it happen.
When did the karaoke love start? Was that like
last cruise was my first time ever doing karaoke.
Ever? I'm glad I began that journey with you then.
You were there.
I thought this was like from like you had like a machine when you were like growing up that you like just like
No, I've done it exactly 3 times. Well, 4 times now. 3 times on this last cruise, and then the first time was on our first cruise.
So it's
a cruise thing.
Well, dude, for those of you that haven't experienced a Ryan Larsen karaoke night, it's the 8th wonder of the world, dude. There's old ladies hugging each other. There's people looking left and right. There's people getting up in arms and excited about my guy.
I was getting recruited into a Ponzi scheme, Das. It's pretty great. So
those old ladies did love you.
They loved me. Crystal, we're tight now. Think about giving her a call. She even gave me one of her albums. So,
ooh, so she produced the music.
She had a CD of like Christian. I think it was Christian music. I haven't listened to it, but
like,
she gave me and Gavin a CD.
I'll
think about it.
I was pretty impressed with Gavin too. Like
Gavin's a good guy.
Yeah, well, and he got up and got after it at karaoke.
Oh yeah, he's a sender. He's a sender, so that's good.
Well, kind of, I guess, talking about, I mean, the trip obviously was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We just got back from like the cruise to the Bahamas, but when you're looking out at like some of the fun stuff and all that stuff. What's no? I'm going to transition. I'm going to say something else. As far as like the end of year 2, okay. So you're wrapping up the end of your second year selling. Was it as magical as the first year?
It was a lot easier emotionally.
It's funny how that is, and I totally echo that sentiment. Like you don't have to go through the same personal journey of like, can I do this? Like
exactly.
It's just like we go out and we make it happen.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, I started off the year knowing I'd already sold 250 previous accounts. It's like, all right, well, now let's just bump the numbers up, right? And so it's just a lot easier knowing that I've already previously done it. But yeah, it was a lot easier emotionally. Just had to be just had to act as a therapist every once in a while, but that's okay.
Well, and a lot of people like now going into their second summer are going to become therapists as well.
Yeah.
So your first summer, you're just keeping your own self afloat. And then year 2, when you start bringing friends and family on, you start adding that life support. What's some things you learned and what's some tips you have for the people that are coming in as new leaders?
Honestly, one of the things was just like, I mean, it's the same thing as like on the doors, right? If there is, it's like people will bring up these objections, but if you like stay in the objection, then it becomes a bigger deal. So if a recruit or just a team member is having some sort of issue, and they're like, if the more you focus on it, the more it's going to become a bigger deal to them. Whereas if you can kind of just like redirect it towards something that they'd rather be talking about, like, hey, but like, remember this, you had a great day this day, or I don't know, something like that, to make it so that the objection didn't seem like a big deal to them. So, right, whatever their issue was at any given point throughout the summer.
Well, and so much of it is just getting people back to why, getting back to them to remember, like, this is the real reason of why we're all here. This is what we're focusing on. And being that North Star for people is huge, because your first year, we all needed that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I harassed your phone all the time. I was blowing you in Oakland up the whole time.
Dude, and those were some good fetching times, man. I actually loved that summer.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Helter skelter year. But as far as like on that same note of like being a team lead and kind of like getting people out and motivated and happy, what are maybe some things that like this year you're like, hey, I'm gonna do this different on my leadership role, or I'm gonna make this adjustment.
Honestly, well, I'm gonna make it. Can you rephrase the question? So it's like.
So like, well, obviously, like you learned a lot your first like the summer managing, or like leading guys and stuff like that. What's something that like you're like, hey, I learned this from last year, or maybe thought about it after the summer, like I'm going to change X or I want to change Y about me
Going into this next year.
Yeah.
Oh, going into the next year. A lot of it is I'm gonna try and have more patience with me and with everyone else, right? Like, for example, you'll have a rookie who's maybe had like 3 rough days in a row, and like I'd kind of go into panic mode sometimes. I'm like, hey, we got to get this guy like on the leaderboard and doing well, or else he's just going to keep spiraling down. But like in reality, like if somebody's going to pull themselves out of the hole, like if somebody's going to get out of the hole, they're going to actually have to end up doing it themselves anyway. So just being more patient and like kind of letting, I don't know, I try to be Superman maybe a little too much throughout it. Like, hey, like I need to pull you out of this hole rather than just like maybe remove some obstacles so you can do it yourself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Well, I think a lot of times when you become a leader, you feel like you can control people almost. Like that sounds kind of weird, but like I feel like you think you have a lot more direct influence on what they do.
Yeah.
And you do have influence, but I think there's some level of like what you're saying, like they've got to rise up.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do rise, you have to be really good at catching when they're ready to learn.
Yeah.
Providing them the material they need so they can do that. I think a bad leader is someone that tries to force learning upon someone.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think an even worse leader is someone that doesn't recognize or can't recognize when someone's trying to get up, but you don't know how to like aid or run to the side or help them as they're getting up through it.
Yeah,
so.
Timing's really big on just a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like making sure you reach out to people at the right time with the right message. So.
Well, and also too, I think just making sure that they feel comfortable with you and you feel comfortable with them. I think a lot of times where I've seen problems in management from at all levels, it's generally when a subordinate or a superior doesn't feel comfortable talking one way to the other. And I think some of the biggest pitfalls I've had in business have been when I wasn't willing to communicate, and at other times too, it was when someone, even when I was trying not to communicate with me.
Yeah. I feel like that's something that I've always been pretty decent at, just been willing to talk, like being able to talk to everyone. Maybe I'll do it in a dumb way where I say some things in a way that maybe doesn't get received well, but like I've never been uncomfortable really like talking to people like either direction, right? Like my relationship with you versus my relationship with my guys this summer was honestly pretty similar, just like in the way communication transpired anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So I was talking about you on a different podcast.
Okay, who's?
And with Ty Bailey.
Okay.
And we were talking about like predictions of people who are going to blow up this summer and get to the next level. And he said you're going to fall. No,
he said I'm going to fall.
No, he hyped you up and said like he thinks that you're going to like get, because you're like a new father, that he feels like that's going to change the game a lot, and he's expecting a rise from Ryan Larsen. And do you concur with that? Do you feel like, hey, there's some wind at my sails now that being a dad? And talk to us a little about that journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, obviously having a kid, it's pretty life-changing. It hasn't changed my life nearly as much as I thought it would, like as everybody told me it would. But like, I mean, I'm only 2 months in, so we'll see what happens. But no, it just gives you that much more to be fighting for, right? Like, I mean, honestly, this year I made enough to pretty easily live off of with what my wife and I need very sufficient for our needs. But now too, right? Like, I don't know, it just opens up a whole new world. Well, it's like now I got to be able to pave their runway so that she'll be able to take off in the future here as well, right? I learned a lot of stuff, for example, from my parents, and like obviously there's gonna be things that everybody wants to tweak from generation to generation. I'm not gonna be anywhere near a perfect parent, But right, like I feel like they did a really good job building a runway so that I'd be able to take off and have a successful life. And now I'm responsible for also building a runway for Brooklyn, so that she can get it. And you know, yeah. So I'm gonna be coming in hot and motivated, ready to go. And I've taken, for example, like off-season trainings a lot more seriously, and like going to door-to-door con and like these boot camps and honestly, like, yeah, I think even me just being in the mindset more, especially during this off season, is going to really help me be able to take off better. And my why is going to be a lot stronger. Like, my why is a lot stronger now, just more out of a love rather than more like a revenge tour why.
I love it. Hey, I'm here for the revenge tour. Hey,
I'm big on whys. I'm big on it. So.
And the reason I know that is that door-to-door con, when we were there, there's that freaking, what do you call that?
Punching bag.
Punching machine. Yeah. And dude, you were there for an hour just punching that thing.
My wrist hurt.
And I don't know if I told you this, but I got your high score on film.
Okay.
And the joy that came out of you, like when you finally got where you needed to go, we were just you looked like a kid in a candy store, and you were trying to show the guy your score, and he was like off doing something. You're like, look. I thought it was one of the more precious things I've seen.
Had to get that poker chip to go to go buy that hat at the sales rabbit store, dude.
It was awesome. So if you ever need to get punched or someone to punch, Ryan Larsen's your guy.
Yeah, I'll try to be. I clapped up Gabe Benedito, but I don't know how anybody else would do.
Shout out Gabe.
Love you, Gabe. You just didn't perform nearly as well as I did, but that's okay.
Dude,
we still love him.
So, talk to me really quick on, like, was there something that maybe you took away from, like, the conference that you learned or you liked? Was there anything, like, maybe a comment or something said that you're like, for those that maybe didn't get the entry fee or didn't get to go in, this is a great thing that I think can impact their sales careers?
Honestly, so went to one of the recruiting workshops, and like I just felt like that's where I was able to like take away a lot. Like, hey, like I mean, I need to be better about just being willing to reach out to people. And like he went through over like cold contacting people you've never met for like recruiting, as well as like going after some of your friends, which like a lot of my friends they've kind of told me like as soon as I got into it, like, you better not recruit me. Better not happen. Like, don't come over. Don't bring it up. Like, I don't want to hear it. And I'm just like, try to be like, okay, man, like chill. It's a job offer is all it is. Like,
yeah, I do.
Like I want to work with you. Don't hate me so much for it. And so I kind of had the mental block that they just don't really want to hear it. But like, I know a lot of them could actually end up doing well. And then, for example, we were able to pull out Trey this last year, and Trey, you know, had a pretty good rookie summer, right? Yeah. And I think it's blessed his life. So basically being willing to reach out to talk to anybody and everybody from that recruiting conference, as well, and being able to roll with the punches. I actually really liked how Harry Mack was there, and how he's like freestyling, but like, so it was really impressive to see the skill that he's been able to accrue over his life. And like, so I don't know. I really respected how he was able to keep composure. He was actually, his house burned down like that week before in those Palisade fires here in California.
Oh, no way.
So he had found out like the day before that his house had burned down, and he still like gave an awesome performance, right? And so that's another that was just another thing that's like, hey, that guy was able to perform and give a good show and like entertain and inspire a lot of people even while shit was hitting the fan. And it was honestly really cool to like, I mean, especially learning that after the fact, to like add that into like, hey, no complaints, no excuses, just do it. So that was another thing that I liked about Door to Door Con was seeing that Harry Mack show with it.
Well, and that's life, man. I mean, there's always going to be something that like will pull up that's going to throw you off emotionally.
Oh yeah.
And I think just figuring out like what you need to learn in that moment is key to kind of like continuing forward at 100%.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times when tragedy strikes, it's more of an opportunity for you to shape your mind and your heart to like where they need to be. And as long as you're willing to like recommit to the basics of the things that are most important and just carry on, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Like even my first summer, right? Like the last 45 days of the summer, I had to send Sadie back to Utah because she was actually in kidney failure for a little bit there, right? And so like, I mean, there's just all sorts of stuff that I was like, hey, just keep pushing through emotionally though. Like it's the best thing I could be doing right now is doing it. So
was that the lowest point for you? What was the point? Like everyone, I think, has a breaking moment, like when it's like, hey, like this might not be worth it, or this is too hard. Do you have a moment like that in sales when it was like, what was the low? The low.
the lowest of the low was probably either like right then, because it was kind of like I had a really rough July, and then she went home at like the end of July, and so like that was my first summer, right? And so like I had a really rough July, and then she went home at the end of July, and so I was like, okay, so now I'm just gonna do this by myself, no wife, instead of having a wife that I can go home to with a good home cooked meal and someone who loves me and can rub my head and tell me it was an okay day, even though it wasn't. But
Oh, that's tough.
and so but then too, like I mean, my best month of my rookie year then ended up being August, that month that she was gone. So I don't know. I just learned it was super mindset oriented, and I don't know. But that's probably like the lowest of the low. If that was the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk let's give some tangible things on
Yeah.
what are you doing now to get better on the doorstep? Is there content you're absorbing? Is there maybe things that you're re-refining over your pitch? Like, kind of talk to us right now on what are you doing to get to the next level?
Yeah. Audible, right? I'm not a big reader, like paperback reader. It's my ADHD will kill me, but like I can listen to a podcast all day, and so kind of being able to find that middle ground with like, either getting educational podcasts or Audible. So right, like listening to Sell or Be Sold, or I already started the new Sam Taggart book, Eat What You Kill.
How
Right.
is that one?
I've liked it a lot so far. I've listened to like an hour and a half of it, and I feel like it's going to do when I get through it. The first part it set up a really good thing of like, hey, this is the culture that you want to have, right? I'm like, we're like go out, we're hunters, and we're gonna go make it happen every day rather than just kind of sitting and letting things happen to us. We're gonna go out things and make things happen, as like being like a sales carnivore. So I've liked it. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend I've read the whole thing, but it's I feel like it's gonna be the thing. It's gonna be one of the things that I'm listening on my way out to area every day. Like so, it's worth the listen so far at least.
I love it.
But yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about stewardship really quick. So, I mean, outside the money of this job, you have a great opportunity to change a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
And what are you doing right now to make sure you're dedicating enough time? I mean, you got a lot of different things you're juggling. New father, your husband, you are a sales leader. You're also going to go out and rip this year. How do you do that? How do you juggle all that and make sure you're giving enough to each area? Does that make sense?
Just being able to manage your time well between,
Yeah.
not neglect my wife and child to make sure I'm helping David and Trey and Jackson all out on the doors. So, I mean,
because I think where a lot of people could benefit, most people on this that are listening, they're juggling a couple things, but I think you're juggling a lot of things and doing them at a good level. I feel like they could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people just forget what priorities are most important, right? And so, obviously, I'm gonna, no matter what, family, wife, making sure Sadie and Brooklyn are safe and doing fine and feeling loved, that love and support and protection from their father and husband, has to be priority number one. And then also making sure that but me doing sales is a big part of that, right? It's me being able to go out and knock those doors is going to be a big part of that. And so it helps set up not their future as well as make it so I'm being a better provider. Just because kind of the roles in our house where it's I bring home I get the house, you make it a home type deal. And my wife's been awesome to we've got different roles, and so she's been a rock star the whole time. And then as far as team leadership, I need to be better about it, right? I feel like I need to be putting more time into making sure my guys are, out there actively improving their lives and also making impacts on others as well. As far as helping bring them into these similar opportunities that we've been able to have. So how I've been able to do it, I don't know. It's something I've just kind of naturally been able to do. Is just make sure my priorities are straight. But I'm sure Sadie will feel neglected sometimes, and I'm sure my sales will feel neglected sometimes too. So it's, don't beat yourself up if you haven't succeeded completely, right?
That's cool.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think it does. Um, as far as like, I want to talk about area management.
Okay.
I feel like you have a good grasp on like where to be, what times, and all that. What time of the day. I'm gonna give you a couple different like areas, and then
Yeah.
I want you to talk to me about when is the best time to approach or hit those, or like time of
Yeah.
day and whatnot. Because I think a lot of like first, second, third years, I think they can get lost in that sauce. And I actually had someone come up recently to me and say the training that you gave, like and all the different stuff you went over was one of the most eye-opening things to them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people could benefit from understanding, okay, this area at this time and for these reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a couple areas and let's just get into it as to why
Yeah.
that's a beneficial place. So let's talk about, let's start with the one that sometimes I think a lot of people fear, but I think is still, there's still places, there's still a lot of juice to grab. Let's talk about cookie cutters.
Okay.
So when in your idea, like, obviously if you're a person that's dictating the map and you're in charge of putting people, when would you tell a rookie the best time to go through a cookie cutter neighborhood and why?
End of the day, right? Last hour, 2 hours, right? Like that's when you got just so many options where you can see like like lights being on in the house. People are going to be hanging out in the garage, right? So the cookie cutter, right? Like some people thrive there. It's never been my favorite, but also like yes, if I never knocked those cookie cutter doors, I'd probably have couple less dollars in my bank account, right? Just because, but so being able to go there at the end of the day, so that makes sure you're running through the finish line at the end of the night, rather than slowing down, all right, just dragging on that 8 to 9 o'clock hour, right? So
Well, and you'll be shocked too, just to add on to that, like, I think a lot of times when people aren't hitting those as heavily as they need to, at like 9 o'clock, that community is still up and active because they just got home from their like 9 to 5. And so a lot of times people are like, well, things get dark around like 9 or 8:30 or whatever. And if you can go to a good cookie cutter where there's a bunch of homes close together, you can find some dude chilling in his garage smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
And or someone like just kind of hanging out.
The people that work the night shift, the people, just all sorts of stuff. So it's worth hitting, especially right there at the end of the night. I really wouldn't go there much earlier. I mean, if you were going to go there earlier, right, you have to, for sure after 5, for sure like after 5 or 6. But like I'm thinking 7:30 through close, basically through the end of the night, and then you can even get those, right? That one more door idea, right? Just hey, I'm going to go get one more door, even though it's 9:15, one more door, right? Because there are going to be those opportunities to get that one more door, and if you close one person every other day after 9 p.m., all of a sudden that's another 50 sales under your bank account, right? Like under your name, just because you were willing to knock like 3 more doors after 9 p.m.
100%. And no matter where it is, you need to make sure that you're giving like 100% of that, just like time, that energy, that mental focus, because like you can store some of that or save that away, but if you don't learn to give it consistently over time, like you're saying, you're going to end up with way less sales at the end of the summer.
Yeah, like I mean, same thing. You're running a race. You run through the finish line. Don't end up jogging, walking across the finish line. Right, sprint through.
100%.
Make sure you finish the full day.
And we're going to get back to like the previous question, but I want to start here. Like it's on the area management context.
Mm-hmm.
But so, what are some things when you drive into a neighborhood that you can look for as like great signs of like, I'm going to start here? Like
first of the day.
Yeah. And let's say, we can be first of the day, middle of the day, kind of end of the day. Like walk us through some of the things that you see that like, hey, this gets me excited to get out of the car. Is it stars on the map? Is it air landscape or
things that'll get me excited to come out of the car? Being by water, right? So you're not closer to water, you're not closer to tree lines, right? So like if the area borders like on like more like a wooded area, and then it goes into so start more on those tree line areas.
And why is that?
Just because bugs, right? Bugs are like, for example, in Spring Branch, they're like, if you're in the right places in Spring Branch, right, by all those wooded areas, there's a lot of scorpions throughout Spring Branch. But you go into like the really well manicured stuff where it's like really well manicured green grass lawns, there's a lot less scorpions. But like you start towards the back where they have that tree line and all the scorpions, and then you can use their names to be bandwagoning and maybe influence more neighbors that way.
Love it.
If that makes sense. Same thing with the water, right? Spiders love water. So being there, I've sold many homes where it's like it'll be a very wealthy house, but it's just their house is covered in spider webs because they're like, I don't know what to do about all these spiders because I'm right here by the lake. But BRD being the premium service that it is, can definitely take down those spider webs.
100%. We control that hardware and software, baby, sales and service. Cool. And as far as like, I also think too, like names and that obviously can get you a lot of momentum. Are you a guy that likes to be right next to 5 or 6 different stars to start the day? Or you like, I like to be a little spaced out?
That'll help, right? I like that obviously having more names, right? Of like neighbors actually like for sure helps. I need to be better about like making sure I keep going back to bandwagoning throughout the pitch, which I think was something I improved on drastically from year 1 to year 2, but right, like not enough, right? It's like we got to really improve that again on that for year 3. So being able to go through though and have those names definitely helps. But also too in the mornings, I really also like just like the stuff that is super spread out, super country folk where a lot of people haven't been willing to go to knock doors before. So right, maybe there is going to be less stars there, but also I feel like, I don't know if even it's more opportunity, but just like I'm willing to hunt where other people haven't hunted yet. So right, like a lot less saturation within it.
I think
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think having the mindset too of like, whenever I go into an area where was no one else willing to go is a great question to ask yourself, because it's just way less likely that someone's trafficked those doors.
Oh yeah. Like I mean, for example, I'm knocking September in Austin, right, which has got to be, I'm assuming, one of the biggest markets in the country for pest control. And I was not running into like, oh, you're like the 10th pest control guy. Like I was not running into that because I was going to the places where people weren't willing to go. And so I'm getting people who had weren't annoyed by door-to-door knockers all summer long, even though it's September, right? So I found it extremely beneficial.
I love it. Let's talk about gated neighborhoods for a little bit. I think for me, some of my best days happen behind a gate.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that is just, again, it's where people aren't willing to go. What are some ways you sneak into gated neighborhoods? What are some ways that you've had success in them?
Sneak in, whether it's just follow a car right behind, or sometimes, sometimes literally there's just a gate, but you can go right around it. Freaking Baja on your scooter, go through the weeds and find yourself in there.
I would always I would park sometimes, like if I felt like it was a tough gate to get into. Yeah. I would like park up the street or in a different neighborhood and scooter over and then like chuck it over and then, like find a nook or cranny. Yes, right. So yeah,
I've definitely Baja'd through some fields because all it was a barbed wire fence on the sides, or just driving around gates. Yeah, there's all sorts of creative ways to get in, but
I think there's a group of people that hold themselves back because they're like, I don't want to be Aladdin. Like, I don't want to try to be like sneaking somewhere where I'm not supposed to be.
Aladdin.
Oh, Aladdin. Yeah. I don't want to be. Yeah, I don't want to like go where other people are telling me like I shouldn't. Yeah. What do you think they're holding themselves back from? And like, what should someone do when they're getting that early resistance of going into a gated neighborhood where they're getting negative like feedback? Yeah. What are some ways that you can maybe stay in the fight a little longer?
I mean, as you can tell from my karaoke, I really don't give a crap what other people will think sometimes. And so, right, when it's Mrs. Helen of the HOA board, I really don't care what she says as long as I can, really not make her too angry where I'm just plastered all over Facebook. Because I don't know. I'll shut myself down mentally sometimes if I'm all over the Facebook group. And so the first thing, as soon as I knock, like, you're the guy on the Nextdoor app, right? It's like, sometimes it helps. Sometimes, it can, like, a lot of people sometimes are like, he's just hustling. Like, what's wrong? But so that'll be, I don't know. I just really don't care about what the Helens think, though. Don't care what Karen thinks.
And I think one thing that can help with that, like if you are maybe someone that does, like let's say you go knock on a door, someone gives you some negative feedback, hey, you're on this page, or cause sometimes it's not even true. Sometimes they just say that.
Yeah.
I think getting on your scooter or getting in your car, and then going to the opposite end of that gated neighborhood
Could help for sure.
because one, I think it gives you a breather. Then it puts you in a different situation, and sometimes just doing that, going and knocking on that new door, people are like, then all of a sudden you get this sweet old lady that doesn't have a Facebook or is chill and like, hey, what? Oh yeah, like.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, like with most deals, right? Like I know pretty quickly based on whether they're going to be a deal, and usually it's based on my energy, right? If I feel like I'm just tired, like I can connect with people pretty easily if I'm in a good mindset and a good mood. And so, right, like sometimes I'll as soon as I knock on this door, I was like, there's no way they're a deal because I brought negative energy kind of to like to this conversation. But when we're vibing, when it's, you can tell pretty quickly. So being able to have that breather will help could help you really get your emotions right, be emotionally tough, and just be like, hey, now make sure go make sure the next person has a pleasant experience with you.
100%. Cool. I feel like we covered a lot of great ground there. As far as like starting your day off, like what kind of area do you typically like to start in? Where's middle of the day? Mm-hmm. Let's talk on that.
Really wealthy or really country to start the day, and then depending on how it's going.
And why really wealthy? Can you unpack that for people?
Yeah. So that's when the moms are going to be home. That's when the moms are going to be home with husbands, credit cards, and nobody's working, and so really wealthy is just making sure that the car's in the driveway. If there's 2 cars in the driveway, yeah, somebody's home, go knock it. I learned like if there's one, usually there's still, even unless the garage is open, like people usually aren't home. But yeah, money, just having money makes it so that a decision maker can be home throughout at 12 o'clock on a Monday, at 2 o'clock on a Thursday. So with that, country, same thing, where it's like kind of the nature of their job is to be at home. Maybe they fed cattle in the morning, and they'll do it again here at night, and throughout the day they're doing something, right? Or like maybe a lot of retired folk are kind of more towards the wealthier retired folk who have a lot of land. Property taxes are high in in Texas, and so that's also more like why more country for first thing in the morning, first thing in the afternoon.
Yeah. Cool. Kind of on all these different areas we talked about and different things, just as you were talking, one thing that popped into my head, there's 3 resources that you have when you're in the fight of area management.
Okay.
One of them, the main thing is your headspace. Another thing is you're on a limited time. You're only, no matter who you are, like you have a set schedule of when you can actually be out there during the summer. So you have your headspace, you have the area, you have your headspace, you have your time, and then you have the actual physical like landscape. Mm-hmm. And what I see a lot of early managers, a mistake I made repeatedly, was thinking that one of those assets is superior to the other. They kind of all are important in one. And you do need to teach people lessons at times, but there's definitely times when it's like, hey, I need to move this person because in order for them to even have a healthy headspace. And you have to be conscious of that as a manager. Mm-hmm. When is it time to push this guy a little bit further? Because sometimes they aren't waxing the neighborhood. They aren't doing what they need to be. But I've also seen managers make the mistake of like making a guy stay in an area too long to where he's broken and he's not actually working well, and it's not a healthy situation. So I think I've seen 2 types of teachings on this. I've seen people get really hard-nosed, just power through, mm-hmm. and I've seen people that are just leapfrogging everywhere, and they don't actually learn the skill of knocking. Yeah. And kind of talk to me on that, on like, where's your meter on like, I push this guy to here, this is my personal thing. Like, what do you do on that?
Well, a lot of it's just going to be like, I mean, you just ask them like, hey, like, be real with me. And so if they're having actual honest conversations with themselves, it's like, okay, like, are we just in a terrible headspace right now? Is that why you just want to move? Right. And so like, hey, I'm willing to move you. I just want to make sure that, it's like, that's actually, you're in a really good spot generally for like, generally that'd be a really good spot for right now for like this time of day. So being able to just, every decision you make has to be like helping you go towards your goal. So right, sometimes if it's hey, I need caffeine in me because my head's pounding and I can't think right now, like, you know, if that's what's actually necessary, taking that 15 minutes to do it, then fine. Generally, it's not going to be that, but right. So do whatever you got to do in order to make sure that they're achieving their goals as well. And so it's like, hey, like if they, at the end of the day, you have to be able to have the honest conversations with them, with yourself. You can't have that honest conversation for your guys, but you can be like, hey, like I'm willing to go back to my truck and make that Propel bottle if I think it's actually going to help me make more sales. If not, though, you just keep knocking. So my first year too, like I'll tell you what, I late frogged around. I was like, hood's bad, I'm out, right? And I learned that, you know, you can get sales on the north side of San Antonio, not just the south, right? That was something that I learned this year. It was just because I had that mental block. And sometimes it takes having success in a different type of area, or having success on the north, for me, is having success on the north side of San Antonio made me actually have belief in myself. And had I never knocked that north side of San Antonio, then I would never been able to build up the belief. So like, yeah, it is a fine line, and I guess the only way that you're gonna be able to find it is having those honest conversations with yourself, and also being able to talk through it. Like maybe I'll talk through things with you, with Oakland, right? Like would help it so that I could ultimately end up making that improvement in myself.
Yeah.
I just rambled. I'm sorry.
But no, I thought it was great. And
but
I think anyone that like is knocked before or is cutting out, that's kind of who I'm speaking to right now, is people that are in upper management that are trying to like learn how to cut out area for themselves,
mm-hmm.
and I think anyone that understands the space and understands what cutting out area is following what we're saying.
Yeah.
So that's great. And anyone that has questions about area management or where to go, I feel like that's been something that I think you've done a really good job of learning over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things, I guess, in kind of leaving this section and going on to something else that I just think is a good guideline is you should never put yourself or someone you're managing in an area you wouldn't knock. And I think a lot of times I've seen bad habits be formed when a manager's not checking up enough on where he's putting his people, and then vice versa when he's putting them in really good situations but not himself. Everyone needs to be putting in a winning game, and you can do that, but I'll say this, it's very tough. And I've done it enough and seen enough days, and just being very present to the map, the people's feedback, but then also what you know from your past experience are going to help you make those right decisions on where to put people and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But cool. Honestly, that's a lot of great content. I like going over that. I just want to ask you too. I mean, obviously you're tenured now. You have a ton of experience. Is there something you want to say to like maybe the bird community that you're like, this is something that will take your game to the next level? Here's why.
Be curious. Ask questions, right? Like, ask. I mean, especially my first year, I didn't harass you near as much the second year because I knew you were extra busy. But just being willing to be curious and always ask questions, especially if, you know, like I'm actually really excited, for example, on this Cade Orgel training that we're about to have. Is it tonight?
Yeah.
So Cade's going to have a training tonight on soft closes, which I've never seen him knock, but dude can sling. So like I'm going to be really excited to like ask questions, or at least, and do a lot of observing from what other people who have done better than I have been able to do. And so, so just being curious will help you a lot. Being emotionally tough, which I don't know how to say, hey, this is what you can do to be emotionally tough. Like, I feel like I just kind of accrued it over 14 years of wrestling my whole life, and, you know, not eating for multiple days at a time, and still being able to go out there and work hard, but I feel like those are kind of like the people that are willing to ask questions and are humble and coachable, and then as well as people that are emotionally tough, because I've definitely learned not everybody's emotionally tough doing this, where when things get hard, you know, fatigue will make a coward out of us all, and some people reach that emotional fatigue fairly quickly. And so doing things just like, hey, realizing this is what tough feels like, and kind of get over it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Those are the things that I think can help anybody who's starting from at any point, wherever you're at, whether you're starting or super tenured, right? Making sure that you have those two skills of being coachable, questioning, and then just emotional toughness.
Yeah. Honestly, as you were talking, it makes me think of I'm trying to run again. I'm trying to get faster.
Yeah.
And one of the big things in running that I haven't realized, and I've ran for, basically since I got back from my mission, I've ran consistently, and I'm just now learning about like different zones of heart training and like where to be and I've gotten a lot faster, but it's been because I've been like going at a slower pace, the one that's a little bit manageable and not too slow, but like a little bit slower. So I'm attacking everything at like a good level and in a good way. And I think when you're going out for the summer, moving at 80 or 90% speed rate on like with your emotions and with your thoughts and with your energies and just going in a healthy way. I think a lot of times is going to help you go a lot faster and get a lot stronger quicker than going 110 all day, every day. Because, I just think there's a lot of benefit to that. So, right, I feel like this podcast was higher level than like a lot of like some of the beginner ones I put out, which I'm glad we put this out. So I'm hoping if anyone is an experienced rep or someone that's going into like upper level management can watch this and take away, because I feel like we gave a lot of like really good stuff for that group. But one, I as you were talking to, I'm like, man, dude, this guy's like, I remember when you were calling me, you've been like, hey, I need to move hoods, and I'm like hearing you now, I'm like, dude, this guy gets it. Like, I'm like I love just the progression I've seen you make and just the leader you become on multiple fronts. So thanks for teaching me a lot over the years, and thanks for coming on today.
I don't know how much I've been able to teach you. I mean, the whole goal's been to become like Dawson, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, dude, love you, bro, and thanks for coming on.
Hey, appreciate you having me. Sorry if I rambled a little too much, but here we are.
No, it was great. I loved it. So, all right, Bird Nation, no business.